point, or else to move to it as quickly as possible. That night I was intoxicated by what I hadn't ever felt before. The boy was a year ahead of me in school, but the next day, when I thought about what we'd done, I understood that he had no more experience than I, and probably even less knowledge. I would have tried whatever he knew enough about to ask for. Instead of a request, I got his inane whinny of a laugh. I was still trying to get used to my breasts. One seemed to be ahead of the other, which, for all I knew, made them comical. But I felt certain that even if they were, Mr. Gordon wouldn't laugh. He had always paid reserved attention to me, had brought me presents, had once even called me from Singapore to wish me happy birthday. Whereas someone my own age would casually humiliate me, Mr. Gordon had for years been offering me careful respect. So I said, yes. When you go into a room with one other person and lock the door behind you, you are momentarily free of every principle by which people ordinarily speak and act with each other. How you're going to be, what you say and do, what you think and feel with that person is entirely up to the two of you. You may legislate as you wish. I learned that from spending a number of afternoons in a 7th-floor view-of-the-lake sublet in Marsden Towers. Because I was on the track team at school, my parents didn't question me about how I spent my afternoons. I actually had quite a bit of time available to spend with Robert in the apartment he'd rented for us. In those rooms, I felt free and strong, which was why I kept wanting to go back there for as long as I did. The world would have me feel that what Robert and I did was wrong, as if he'd committed a crime against me beyond even what is considered acceptably criminal. I refused to feel that wrongness. Robert harmed me no more than I harmed him. I realize now that my mother worked at being friends with Suzanne Gordon. I realize now my mother had a very restrained crush on Robert, a little like the one she had on Jack Kennedy. Robert was accustomed to being flattered by others. To my mother, he made himself entertaining, as he probably did to anyone who courted him. My mother and Robert had grown up together in Shaker Heights. In the past, whenever they were together, they had enjoyed discussing the lives of their childhood acquaintances. Robert and my father had a formal relationship that was played out in terms that amused my mother and me. We teased my bookish father about the stilted conversations he and Robert carried on when they were required to chat. Mostly they discussed tennis, which Robert played regularly but didn't keep up with, and which my father didn't play but kept up with. My father had no real interest in tennis. It was just that every day of his life he read The Plain Dealer very thoroughly. There was a subtlety to the way my mother and Suzanne Gordon related to each other, a warmth that was half real and half pretended. To me, their conversations always sounded nervous. Having thought about her all these years, I've decided that Suzanne was never able to locate herself properly in life, though she was an astute and able person. When I was growing up, I remembered things Suzanne said, and I thought about her a lot. She had no job. She had no children. Though she volunteered at the hospital and the library, she made no friends among the other volunteers. Her manner was too distant, and her conversation was probably too peculiar. My mother said she thought Suzanne spent hours of her life paging through books from museums. I've come to understand that what fascinated me about Suzanne was how alone she seemed, and how it didn't, apparently, bother her that she had no real friends. The interest she had in Robert, however, she was able to share with my mother. Each knew where the other stood, though I believe that neither ever spoke frankly. As a young child, I'd studied the way my mother and Suzanne talked. They sat with their backs straight in their chairs, their ankles crossed, and their hands in their laps, their faces pleasant. Such a formal pose perfectly suited Suzanne. I still have vivid memories of her sitting like that in our living room, with the light from our bay window catching the reddish highlights of her hair. I could sense the awkwardness of her talk with my mother when they took